My wife served me divorce papers at my birthday party. Surprise, I met someone better. 6 months later, she was sleeping in her car outside my place. The night Chloe served me divorce papers at my own birthday party felt like the end. But the real shock? Just 6 months later, she was sleeping in her car outside my apartment, begging to come home. I work in corporate IT here in Denver, the kind of job where you fix problems nobody notices until something breaks. Honestly, that's pretty much how my marriage was, too. Chloe came from money. Real money. Her dad, Richard, owned half the commercial real estate in town and never missed a chance to remind you. For 6 years, I'd been the guy who married up according to her family. The guy who wasn't quite good enough. The one who should be grateful Chloe even looked his way. I'm self-made. Worked my way through college, built my career from nothing. But to them, I was just some middle-class IT guy who got lucky. Richard never missed an opportunity to underscore it either. Little comments at family dinners about real business versus tech support. Jokes about how I probably couldn't afford the wine we were drinking. Suggestions that maybe I should let the men talk when business came up. I took it all because I loved Chloe. Or at least, I thought I did. Or maybe I just loved the idea of proving them all wrong. About 3 months before my birthday, things started changing. Chloe got distant, cold. Like she was physically there, but mentally checked out completely. She started working late, really late, coming home at 10 or 11, smelling like expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. She'd smile at her phone in ways she hadn't smiled at me in months. When I'd ask what was funny, she'd just brush me off and turn the screen away. I'm not stupid. I knew something was off. But I also kept thinking maybe I was paranoid. Maybe I was insecure. Maybe if I just tried harder, everything would go back to normal. So I started doing more around the house, planning date nights she'd cancel, buying her favorite wine she wouldn't drink. And the whole time, she was just slipping further and further away. Then October 15th arrived, my birthday. A Saturday. I wasn't expecting much. Maybe dinner at home. Maybe she'd remember to get a cake. Honestly, I would have been happy just spending time together. Instead, that morning, she woke me up with this weird, excited energy I hadn't seen in months. She told me she'd planned a surprise. We were going to her parents' house that night. My stomach immediately dropped. Nothing good ever happened at her parents' house. I asked if we could just stay home, just the two of us. But she insisted, said it would be fun. Said her family wanted to celebrate with me. I should have known right then that something was catastrophically wrong, because her family had never wanted to celebrate anything with me. We showed up around 7. The house was full of people. Her parents, her sister Samantha, who was honestly the only decent one in that whole family, some of her parents' country club friends. All of them holding champagne glasses, wearing these weird, smirking expressions like they were in on some inside joke. Richard greeted me at the door with this huge fake smile, shook my hand way too hard, told me happy birthday, and that they had quite the evening planned. His voice sounded like a lawyer about to spring a trap. Chloe led me to the living room where everyone was gathered. I noticed they'd set up this little table in the center with a single envelope on it, cream-colored, expensive-looking, the kind of thing you'd use for a wedding invitation. She picked it up, turned to face me with the whole room watching, and handed it to me with an expression I'd never seen before. Something cold, satisfied, and cruel all at once. I opened it. Inside were divorce papers. Already filled out. Already dated. Just waiting for my signature. The room went completely silent for about 3 seconds. Then Chloe announced she was leaving me for someone who wasn't a disappointment. And I swear to God, everyone started clapping. Her mother actually clapped. Richard laughed this deep, booming laugh like it was the funniest thing he'd ever witnessed. He walked over, put his hand on my shoulder like we were old friends, and told me they never thought she'd actually marry someone so beneath her, but hey, at least I got 6 good years out of it. The way he said it, like I should be grateful for the scraps, like I should thank them for the privilege of being humiliated. My hands were shaking so bad I thought I'd drop, my vision blurring. It felt like someone had just reached into my chest and crushed everything there. But at the same time, this white-hot rage was building up. This absolute fury at being made into a spectacle, at being treated like garbage by people who thought their money made them better than me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip that table. I wanted to tell every single person in that room exactly what I thought of them. But instead, something else happened. Something I didn't expect. I looked at the papers. I looked at Chloe standing there, arms crossed, waiting for me to break down. I looked at Richard with his smug smile. And I just felt this sudden clarity. This absolute certainty that they'd done me the biggest favor of my life. I pulled a pen from my jacket, walked over to that little table, and signed every page without saying a word. My hands were steady, my face blank. I gave them absolutely nothing. Chloe's smile faltered for just a second, like this wasn't how it was supposed to go, like she'd expected tears or begging or me making a scene. I straightened up, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, "Thanks for the birthday gift. Best one I've ever received." Then I walked out of that house while they all stood there in stunned silence. I got in my car, drove exactly 3 blocks, pulled over, and sat there shaking for 20 minutes while everything hit me all at once. The betrayal, the cruelty, the calculated humiliation of it all. But also this weird sense of relief, because at least now I knew. At least now the pretending was over. My phone started buzzing before I even made it home. Text after text from Chloe, asking why I wasn't fighting for us. Like I was the one who'd done something wrong. Like I was supposed to beg her to stay after she'd just publicly destroyed me in front of her entire family. The first week after the party was the worst week of my life. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, because that's not how this works. I went to work, sat at my desk, stared at my screen, and couldn't tell you a single thing I actually did. My brain was just replaying that night over and over. The look on Chloe's face, the sound of everyone clapping, Richard's hand on my shoulder like we were buddies. I'd come home to our apartment, except it wasn't our apartment anymore. It was just mine, and everything reminded me of her. Her coffee mug in the cabinet, her jacket still hanging by the door, the indent in the couch where she used to sit. I didn't eat much, maybe some takeout here and there. Didn't sleep well either. Just lay there at 3 a.m, thinking about how stupid I'd been, how I'd ignored every red flag, how I'd actually believed that trying harder would fix things. But somewhere around day 5, something shifted. I was sitting in a bar downtown. Second beer, third beer, I don't remember. And I wasn't sad drunk. I was angry drunk. The kind of angry where everything becomes crystal clear and you realize you've been playing defense your whole life when you should have been playing offense. I pulled up my phone and called David, this lawyer I'd met at a conference 2 years back. Corporate guy, sharp as hell, the kind of person who sees 3 moves ahead. He picked up on the second ring. I told him what happened, and there was this pause before he said, "Tell me you didn't sign anything without reading it." And I admitted I had. He actually laughed. Not at me, but like he'd just been handed a gift. He told me to meet him at his office Monday morning and to bring everything, bank statements, emails, anything I had access to. When I asked why, he just said, "Chloe's family made a critical mistake. They humiliated you publicly, and that changes everything." That weekend, I started going through our shared files, the cloud storage we'd set up years ago for household stuff. And that's when I found it. There was a folder buried 3 layers deep, labeled something innocuous like Work Projects 2024. Inside were hundreds of messages between Chloe and someone named Marcus, a colleague from her firm. They went back 8 months, 8 entire months. And they weren't just flirty texts. They were detailed, explicit, planning meetups at hotels, laughing about how clueless I was, discussing their future together like I was already gone. There were photos, screenshots of hotel reservations, receipts from restaurants I'd never been to, and one message from Chloe that I'll never forget, where she wrote that the birthday party was her dad's idea. That they wanted to break me publicly so I'd sign fast and they could move on without complications. I sat there reading until the sun came up. And I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was coldly, methodically furious. The kind of fury that doesn't explode, it calculates. Monday morning, I walked into David's office with a thumb drive containing everything. I've never seen a lawyer look that happy. He pulled up the messages, read through them, and told me this was leverage. Serious leverage. Because Chloe's family cared deeply about reputation. And a public divorce involving infidelity and premeditated humiliation would destroy that reputation. He said we could push for a settlement that would hurt, or we could threaten to make everything public and let them decide how much their image was worth. I asked what he recommended. He said, make them sweat first. So that's exactly what we did. David sent a letter to Chloe's lawyer. No specifics, just a vague mention of newly discovered evidence and potential public proceedings. Within 48 hours, I got a call from Chloe. Not a text, an actual call. Her voice shaking, asking what I was doing, what evidence, why was I making this difficult? I didn't answer. Just let her talk herself in circles before hanging up. The calls kept coming. From her mother, even from Richard, who went from smug to concerned real fast, leaving voicemails about how we should handle this like adults and keep things private. Which was hilarious, coming from the man who had orchestrated my public humiliation. I didn't respond to any of them. And the silence drove them crazy, because they were used to controlling the narrative. Used to people folding under pressure. And I wasn't folding. I was rebuilding. I moved out of our old apartment, found a smaller place across town. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. No memories attached. I started reading again, something I hadn't done in years. Just got lost in books every night instead of scrolling through social media or watching TV. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during the marriage, guys from college, people from work, and realized how isolated I'd become trying to fit into Chloe's world. I even started a side project, building custom furniture in my building's workshop. Just something to keep my hands busy and my mind focused. And it turned out I was pretty good at it. Around week 8, Chloe showed up at my office. She didn't call ahead, didn't ask permission. Just walked right up to my desk during lunch hour, looking exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. She tried to talk to me about reconciliation, about how she'd made a mistake, how Marcus wasn't who she thought he was, how she wanted to work things out. I listened to the whole thing without saying a word. When she was done, I asked her one question: if the roles were reversed, if I had humiliated you at a party and handed you divorce papers in front of your family, would you take me back? She didn't answer. Just looked at the floor. And I told her to leave. That's when things started falling apart for her. Really falling apart. Samantha, her sister, called me one night and told me everything. She was the only one in that family with a conscience. She said Marcus had been using Chloe, that he was married, that his wife had found out and confronted Chloe at work. The whole affair was now office gossip, and Chloe was facing a potential ethics review. She said Richard's company was under investigation for some shady real estate deal. Nothing to do with me, but the timing was terrible, and the family was hemorrhaging money on lawyers. She said Chloe had been staying at their parents' house, but the atmosphere was toxic. Everyone blaming everyone else. And Chloe was starting to crack under the pressure. I thanked Samantha for telling me, and she said something I'll never forget, that she was sorry, that she tried to stop the birthday party, but nobody listened. That she always thought I was too good for her sister. 2 weeks later, David called with the final settlement terms. Chloe's family had agreed to everything we asked for. The house we'd been paying for together was mine. The joint savings split 70/30 in my favor, and they'd cover all legal fees. It wasn't about the money. It was about them finally understanding they couldn't just steamroll people without consequences. And that felt better than any amount in a bank account. The divorce was finalized 3 months after that birthday party. On the day it became official, I didn't feel sad or angry or vindicated. I just felt free. Like I'd been carrying something heavy for 6 years and finally put it down. 6 months after that birthday party, I was living a completely different life. And I mean that in every possible way. The apartment I'd moved into had become home. Actual home. Not just a place I slept, but somewhere I wanted to be. I'd finished 3 custom furniture pieces, sold 2 of them through a local craft fair, and had commissions lined up for next month. My reading list had grown to the point where I'd bought a second bookshelf, mostly psychology and philosophy, trying to understand how I'd let myself become so small in that marriage. Work was going well, too. I'd gotten a promotion, nothing major, but it came with better pay and actual respect from my team. For the first time in years, I felt like I was building something instead of just maintaining it. I'd even started dating. Nothing serious. Just coffee here and there with a woman named Sophia I'd met at a bookstore. She was kind, genuinely kind. The kind of person who asked questions and actually listened to the answers. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Completely mine. And I'd forgotten what that felt like. Then one night in late April, around 11 o'clock, I got home from dinner with friends and noticed a white Audi parked across the street from my building. Engine off, interior light on. I didn't think much of it at first. Went upstairs, changed, started reading, but something nagged at me. Around midnight, I looked out the window, and the car was still there. The next morning, same car, same spot, and I could see someone in the driver's seat wrapped in a jacket. By the second night, I knew who it was. There aren't that many white Audis in our area, and Chloe had always driven one. Part of me wanted to go down there, but another part, the part that had spent 6 months rebuilding, told me to wait. To let her make the first move. On the second morning, early, maybe 6 o'clock, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole, and there she was. Chloe. But not the Chloe from the birthday party, not the Chloe from our marriage. Someone else entirely. She looked exhausted, like she'd aged 5 years in 6 months. Her hair was unwashed. Her eyes had dark circles that makeup couldn't hide, and she was wearing sweatpants and an old college hoodie I remembered from years ago. I opened the door, and we just stood there for a moment, neither of us knowing where to start, before she asked if we could talk. I stepped aside to let her in. She sat on my couch, the one I'd built myself, and started crying before she even said a word. Not dramatic crying, just quiet tears, like she'd been holding them back for too long. She told me everything. And I mean everything. How Marcus had been lying to her the whole time. How he was married with 2 kids. How his wife had shown up at Chloe's office and caused a massive scene that got HR involved. She said Marcus had dropped her immediately after that, blocked her number, acted like she didn't exist. Chloe had been placed on administrative leave pending an ethics investigation. She told me her dad's business was falling apart, that the investigation Samantha mentioned had turned into federal charges, that Richard was looking at serious jail time, and the family was drowning in legal fees. She said her mother blamed her for everything, said if Chloe hadn't been so reckless with Marcus, none of this would have come out, which made no sense, but grief and anger rarely do. She told me she'd been staying in hotels at first, then with friends, but everyone had an opinion about what she'd done. Everyone had advice. Eventually, she ran out of places to go. So she'd been sleeping in her car for 2 nights outside my building because she didn't know where else to turn. I listened to all of it without interrupting. When she finally stopped talking, she looked at me with this desperate hope and said she'd made the biggest mistake of her life, that she wanted to come back, that we could start over, that she'd changed and learned and would spend the rest of her life making it up to me. She reached for my hand, and I pulled it away. Not aggressively, just firmly. I told her something I'd been thinking about for months. I said, "Thank you." She looked confused. So I explained that the divorce, the humiliation, all of it had saved my life in ways she'd never understand. I told her I'd spent 6 years trying to be enough for her and her family. 6 years shrinking myself to fit into their world. And the birthday party had freed me from that. Showed me exactly who they were and exactly who I didn't want to be. I said I'd rebuilt everything, my career, my friendships, my sense of self-worth, and I wasn't going to tear that down for someone who'd only come back because all her other options had disappeared. She started crying harder, saying I didn't understand, that she really had changed, that she loved me. I told her maybe she did, but love wasn't enough. Not after everything. Not when trust was gone and respect had never really been there. I told her she could stay tonight, one night, on the couch, because I wasn't going to let her sleep in her car. But tomorrow, she needed to leave and figure out her own path forward. She nodded, wiped her face, and asked if there was any chance, any possibility down the road. I said, honestly, I didn't know, but right now, the answer was no. That night, I lay in bed, listening to her cry in the other room. Part of me felt guilty, but most of me felt certain, because I'd learned the difference between compassion and self-destruction, between helping someone and letting them drag you down. The next morning, I made coffee, left a cup on the counter for her, and gave her the number for a women's shelter that also helped with job placement and temporary housing. She took it, thanked me quietly, and left without trying to change my mind. I think that was the first mature thing she'd done in our entire relationship. A week later, Richard called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. His voice was different, smaller, none of that booming confidence. He asked if I could help Chloe. Maybe let her stay with me. Maybe give her some money to get back on her feet. I told him no. Flat. Simple. Final. He started saying something about family and doing the right thing. I cut him off. I said, you made it very clear at my birthday party that I wasn't family, that I was beneath you. So I'm sure you'll understand when I say your daughter's situation isn't my problem. And before he could respond, I added one more thing. If Chloe genuinely needs help getting back on her feet, she should reach out to Sophia at the bookstore on Oak Street, because Sophia runs a support group for women rebuilding their lives and actually knows how to help people without enabling them. Then I hung up and blocked his number, blocked Chloe's mother's number, blocked everyone except Samantha, because she'd been decent through all of this. 2 weeks after that, I went to an animal shelter and adopted a dog, a 3-legged mutt named Max, who'd been there for 6 months because nobody wanted a damaged dog. I figured we'd be good company for each other. I took Max home, set up his bed next to my bookshelf. That night, while he slept and I read, I realized something important. What I thought was the end of my life, that birthday party, that public humiliation, had actually been the beginning. The moment I stopped living for someone else's approval and started living for myself. Chloe had wanted to destroy me that night. Or maybe she just wanted to hurt me. I'll never really know. But what she'd actually done was set me free. And 6 months later, sitting in my apartment with my dog and my books and my furniture and my quiet, peaceful life, I'd never been more grateful for anything. What would you have done in my situation?